I often get asked on my socials about book recommendations. Personally, I'm not big on any recommendations, but if I were to actually recommend something, there is a book that I got a long time ago that has been my go-to for knowing what to do for my life and what I wanted to get out of it. Because I realized early on that you first have to become the thing in your mind before you can manifest it in your real life. And I have always been fascinated and obsessed with family and wealth. When everyone else was studying basketball and sports and all that stuff, I was studying like wealthy families like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and the Walton family and on and on and on. And not because I was trying to obsess about their lives, like that's interesting, but I was more interested in like, how do you do that? Because I always knew I was going to have a family. That was like one of the first things I knew I was going to have when I was growing up, because I come from a great family. Even though we didn't have any money growing up, I was literally a billionaire when it came to my family. We have a rich history. My family is so cool. I love my brothers, my sister, my relatives. We have rich culture. So the only thing you got to do if you want to have a family wealth building office is to take your name and just put capital behind it. And boom, you got a family office. You don't even need any money. And I'm only half joking. Like, really, that's all you got to do. You can incorporate, put capital at the end of their name, come up with your logo. So what this does is it starts to change your mindset about how you make decisions within your family, because you have to run it in a way that achieves a goal now. You can't just go throughout your day and say, well, you know, they got to go to school and this and that, and hopefully they get married and things work out. You actually become more purposeful. So thinking about this and actually planning on it happening, it's a very powerful decision to make. And if you look at the statistics of wealthy families, there's always some crazy parent behind it who just decides, I am going to build something. I am going to take risks that is going to benefit the future generations. And that's typically how it starts. I know there's a billionaire pledge where they're going to donate all their money at the end of their lives. And there's this notion that you shouldn't leave your kids anything. You should just let them figure it out for themselves. And while I appreciate where that's coming from, I don't agree. I think that's whack. Like, you know, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Zuckerberg, they all signed this like donate all their money to charity. But I know they're leaving their family money. I just think it would be really cool if I could leave my kids something, not just money though. This is where I also think a lot of people haven't read enough to know that capital doesn't just mean money. Capital means the asset of your family, right? The human capital, who they are, what they know. Your family history is capital. The skills within your family is capital. The network that they have is capital. It's all capital. The ability you have to communicate is capital. The relationships you have are capital. So managing all of that is often ignored because it's replaced with money. And you all know that money comes and goes, but your family tends to stick around a lot longer. So I've always thought about my family in terms of being my wealth. This is the book, and it's not fancy. There's no great logo. There's no famous authors, but I'm telling you, I keep going back to this book. It's called Preparing Heirs. In it, it actually gives 3 of the keys that you need to actually pass on your family's wealth, not just money, all the wealth, the values, the beliefs, the communication skills, the honesty, the trust, all that stuff. And here's what they say. Number 1, total family involvement. Okay. And that's both spouses and both bloodlines. This is incredibly difficult because, as you know, a lot of people don't get along with their in-laws, and there's always some sort of conflict between the two. And so trying to include everybody is a challenge in and of itself. Number 2, a process that integrates. So you got to make sure that from a very young age, early on, everyone's getting involved, right? And this is very difficult to do because it's actually a lot easier for you as the father to just go out and work, bring home the money, and then give it to your wife and say, okay, spend it. And then you just get caught in this cycle of never ending work. she gets caught in the never-ending cycle of managing things, and no one really came together and said, guys, what are we going to do with this? What can we spend our money on? And then the last is the learning and practicing in family situations. So this is real time. You got to do it along the way, of skills in the areas of communication, openness, trust, accountability, team building, articulating and sharing values, and unifying behind a common mission. Like, that alone is a ton of work, okay? But for me, the kind of wealth that I'm looking for is not just consolidating wealth in terms of money and assets that can be passed on, but it's also the ability I want to have someday to just ring up my son and be like, hey, come here, Junior, you want to go golfing today? And he'll just drop everything and come hang out with me. That is the kind of wealth I'm looking for. But it's more complicated than just, hey, take the day off. And, you see all those sentimental, like, oh, you should, if you get calls from your mom and dad, you're the luckiest person in the world. Yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not talking about the romanticism of that. Think about the details of that. That means I have to make sure I'm available to go play golf. And I got to make sure my son is in a situation where he can do that, right? Where he has control enough over his career or his business, and a good enough relationship with his wife so his wife doesn't hate me, right? And then his children don't resent me because I pulled them away to come play golf for, 8 hours. That's harder than it looks. And to me, the only way to get there is to make sure that you think about your family in terms of a family office, right? Where life is driven and operated almost like a business. And then you start seeing your family that way. And someone will go, wow, you don't want to mix family and business. That's just what wealthy families tell you, so you don't ever do what they do. This book, I've always come back to it, and my children can attest that over the last 14 years, I have literally made hundreds and hundreds of presentations. I've literally sat my young children under 10 and spoke to them for like 3 hours, just discussing concepts, discussing ideas, teaching them things, speaking with them about things. And that over time has evolved to the point where now they actually speak back to me. They share their thoughts. They know the environment is purposely designed for them to be honest and push back and debate about things. But that was something I implemented a long time ago. So now I actually can see the possibility of being able to build something with them. The concern that I have is that if I don't put my voice in front of them constantly, then they're going to be raised by the internet. They're going to be raised by social media. And I already know the cast of characters they're going to be taught by. You're going to get funny people who catch their attention like Kevin Hart and The Rock giving them advice. You're going to get people like David Goggins telling them that they need to stay hard, Gary Vaynerchuk, Cody Sanchez, and whoever else is in their feed. Why do you think I'm on here? It's because my kids have their phones and I want to be in the feed. I want them to hear my thoughts. I want them to see me as being that relevant voice in their feed that they always look to for what's going on and what am I thinking and what's relevant and how they should approach life, because their attention is all part of me being able to pull this together. If I'm not in their feed, if I'm not constantly speaking with them somehow, and I will go wherever they are, then I have no chance of this happening. They're just going to be raised by the internet and they're going to be off following some influencer, doing what the influencer says they should do to be happy. And I'm telling you, if there's one thing I know, all of us will return home someday. I don't care how rich, how successful, how happy you think you are, you will have a yearning to come home. And the question is, what are you coming home to? Is there something there for you? Was it waiting for you? And I'm a patient man. I can wait a long time for this to materialize, but it's already been 14 years since I've been married and we're going on to our 15th year. This is how I've approached my life from the very beginning. So this isn't new for me. I'm not suddenly looking into how to create family wealth. I've just been doing it ever since my kids were born. And I've always had these ideas. And so hopefully that's helpful to you guys in terms of how I think about things and why I'm even doing this. And I would rather be the influencer than hand that mantle off to someone else. And who knows what they're going to say? Who knows what they're going to be talking about? It's like Dikembe Mutombo, not in my house. Good luck to you guys. Hopefully you find some value in thinking about your family like a family office and trying to keep people together. Because I promise you at the end of the day, you won't have much left in that.